Hello everybody and welcome to BroomWagon. You will not get there on the road bike. First things first, please subscribe to Spotify or Apple Podcast or to whatever you want, and remember to push the bell button wherever you find it, and also remember that you can rate or do whatever you want with the application you're using to listen to podcasts. In this way, the kind of content that I'm putting together is gonna go to more people, and all these crazy algorithm things are gonna make the BroomWagon Podcast, that is actually your second most favorite independent cycling podcast, could become something more, let's say, hopefully. Instagram, CalamarosCC, BroomWagon Podcast, send me messages, do whatever you want, and down in the description below, coffee link. You can actually drop some coins if you think I'm doing a valuable job and this podcast is independent, should remain independent, and can still be produced. That's the English way of saying can still be produced. Even in the future, I'm gonna do it anyways because I love it, because there are stories like this. Today, going straight to the point, I'm interviewing Dan Craven. I think I already told the story in the rest of the episode. I recorded it a month ago or stuff like this, but I'm gonna go through anyways quite quickly. 2016, this podcast started. Jesus, a lot of years ago. I was working at that time for a famous company that is meant to teach languages to people. Babbel, full disclosure. Let's say that. At that time, I was working for Babbel. I was doing a podcast with them. I started producing this podcast there. Babbel means learning languages. I was already super into cycling, and I was into adventure cycling. There was this race, the Tro Bro Leon in Britain. And the story of this kind of amazing race. It was amazing. First of all, gravel, country roads take me home to the place I belong. Farm roads, piglets involved. The first Breton rider would win a piglet. And this was the story. But also this race was born because of financing a school to keep and to save basically the Breton languages, cycling, adventure. I wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to go and ride this amazing race, or in this case ride. The biggest character of this race at the time was Dan Craven. He was actually making a lot of super awesome loud noise around this race, because it's just one of the most amazing races that you can imagine, right? And so I said, okay, I want to have an interview with Dan Craven. It never happened. I remember that I sent some email around. Nobody's fault. He was a pro at that time. It was a bit of a mess. Then I was actually 2 years back at Bespoke in London. Amazing event with a bunch of friends of mine. Who was there? Dan Craven, presenting his amazing project called Onguza. I didn't talk with him because I didn't find him around during the event, but then after party, we spent 2 hours sitting on the sofa talking about stuff. And then we said goodbye by saying, okay, let's try to make a podcast together, right? All right. It never happened forever. Then I put in a super famous Instagram application a photo because I want to sell the 2 bikes of mine, the open up that I have in the 3T Strada, because I think the 2 drop bar bikes are too many and I want to buy a new bike. Then I put this thing on Instagram. He answered, what are you taking in replacement? And then I said, wait a second. Why don't we have an interview and discuss a bit more about your project? Because Onguza is one bike that is for sure gonna be in my shortlist. Basically, the shortlist is between 2 bikes. I'm gonna let you know more in case you are more interested about the topic. But once you're here, once I have you here, let's have an episode of the podcast. Let's record an interview. Then he said, okay, let's do it. Then this let's do it is this episode of the BroomWagon Podcast. I will talk to you at the end. So people, I need to tell you a little story, and I'm gonna say actually this story first time live also to my guest of today. You are gonna, I would not say guest, I would say probably anyways protagonist of the episode. And my story is that since I think it was 2015, I'm trying to have the protagonist of today, the guest of today on the podcast. Why? Because before then, I probably never knew about a race in Provence, in Bretagne, sorry, called the Tro Bro Leon. And then at a certain point, it's a super nice race. It's kind of I would put it a Paris-Roubaix on steroids with a lot of gravel and super, super harsh cobblestones. And I remember actually that probably the main spirit of that race was actually my guest of today. And then I saw photos there and all the enthusiasm that he put into the race. And then I said, I need to interview this guy. Then, of course, things are moving around and blah, 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 blah. And then I never had him on the podcast, still have it on the back of my head. I followed all this project, still on the back of my head. I met him in person at Bespoke 2022. And we spent a lot of time talking about all these things. Then again, back of my head, I thought, this guy is probably too busy to have a talk on the podcast. And then I put a photo on the social media last time. He answered me. And again, there was an amazing video about his main project at the moment on the internet. And I said, I think now it's time to talk with Dan Craven. Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
It's absolutely a great pleasure. It's really a moment that actually I was thinking about that. Can you try to have you on the podcast instead? Because, at the end of the day, you're doing a lot of amazing things. So that's why it's cool to have you here. We're going to talk about your project. You're going to talk about a tiny bit the Tro Bro Leon, because, my younger Stefano needs to know a couple of things about that. I need to nurture the kid. 2015, I was already more than 30. I was 34. But still, I need to know a couple of information there. And, of course, we're going to talk about everything in the mid, whatever happens there. So, first of all, Dan, how are you doing?
Amazing. And thank you for that amazing introduction. I could have done this podcast a long time ago, as you said, but I'm really happy that we're doing it now, because also, like you've said, a whole bunch of things I've been busy, and it feels like now is really the time for me to be doing things like this. We're in a place to really hit the go button.
That's awesome. Let's start from the beginning, I would say. Give us, me, everybody, a little intro about you. Who's Dan Craven?
So, Dan Craven, sometimes better known as Dan from Nam. I am born and raised very proudly Namibian. For those who don't know, Namibia is between South Africa and Angola and Zambia and Zimbabwe and Botswana, which means basically the bottom left corner of Africa. This is my home. I'm very, very proudly Namibian. And I was a professional cyclist in Europe for many years. Obviously, depends on your definition of a professional cyclist. I think the best definition I was ever given of a professional cyclist was a good friend of mine who said, if you're able to save money for retirement, that basically means that makes you a cyclist.
Nice.
Not if you're living day to day. In that case, if you use that classification, I was only really a professional cyclist for 3 years. But I was being paid to race my bike, and I was racing my bike full time in Europe for about 15 years. I think the culmination of the career could probably be summed up with 2 Olympic Games and 1 Vuelta a España.
Oh, nice.
But results and performance were never, let's just say, I might be an Olympic cyclist, but I was never any good.
Okay.
And so to put that statement, to explain that statement, it means that, like, at that level, I was one of the guys hanging on, as opposed to one of the guys racing. If I came and did a domestic race, obviously very different thing. Obviously, I was a good cyclist, but at the very high end of the sport globally, I was happy to be there. Many reasons. In hindsight, I wish I'd done so many things different. I know I could have been a lot better. And I suppose that's part of the reason why I had such a long career, because I I knew that I could do better, and I was fighting to find out why I was having so few good days and so many bad days. And so I basically spent a lot of my career almost not focusing on the training and the racing, but focusing on what's my body doing? Why is this happening? And trying to see physios and chiros and all kinds of people, and having an amazing, amazing journey and learning so much along the way. But what it kind of meant was that I was I wasn't focusing on the wrong thing because it was the thing I had to focus, but I was focusing on different things to what everyone else around me was focusing on. And at the end of the day, the injuries, I never really got a grip on them, and that ended my career. But I had a lot of fun. And I think because I was always looking for answers, I was also trying to enjoy myself along the way and almost distract myself. And I suppose my personality, but also just me trying to have fun along the way is what caught a lot of people's attention. It's how you saw me, was me just sort of being like, wow, I'm here. I'm doing this absolutely amazing thing, and let's try and have some fun. And it's quite funny because I meet people who know about me, and so many people know me from different things that I did. I mean, obviously, I did something at the Olympics, and that caught a lot of people's attention. But some people sort of are like, "Oh, Dan, you did this thing," and I'm like, "Oh, wow, yeah, I forgot about that one."
Okay. Nice. And so no, I need to go on that. You said that actually you did something in the Olympics and caught the attention. What have you done?
So basically, I did, like I said, 2 Olympics. Should have actually been 3, but I was tested positive for COVID 24 hours before flying to Tokyo.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. And but London Olympics was my first, and then at the Rio Olympics, I took one look at the course and I was like, wow, this course is insane. Afterwards, I think about 40% or less of the start of the field actually finished the race, to give an idea of how difficult that course was. And so my objective of the race was to get in the early breakaway and, be in front of the race. So the night before the race, I phoned my wife and I said, if I get in the breakaway, I'm going to at some point look at the camera and I'm going to probably wave. And if you can tweet on my Twitter, just hello, mom. So I gave my wife my password, go off, do the race, don't finish because it was such a ridiculous race. And I pull up to the feed zone where the Namibian team are, the support crew. And the first thing they say to me is, Dan, your wife is amazing. And I'm like, no, hi, no, how are you? No, well done, Dan. You just raced in the Olympics. Your wife is amazing. I'm like, what's going on? So unbeknownst to me, during this, my wife had taken my Twitter and pretended to be me in the race. So she was live tweeting from the race, but actually she was sitting in our apartment in Spain, killing herself laughing, having the absolute time of her life. And basically, a lot of people realized immediately that this was a joke, but so many people actually thought I was racing in the Olympics and tweeting at the same time. So it went viral. It absolutely went all over the world. And my follower numbers just jumped up. It was ridiculous. And so that was just like this mind-blowing experience. But then what happened also was on the descent, for example, Vincenzo Nibali crashed and he broke both collarbones. Like I've never heard of anyone in a bicycle accident breaking both collarbones. But the well-known descender, Vincenzo Nibali, crashed so badly and broke both collarbones at Rio Olympics. And it wasn't his fault. It was like one of those descents where in training going down it, I asked myself not, is someone going to crash on there? It's like who and how many people are going to crash. It's just really obvious that descent was dangerous. So many people crashed out of the road race that they needed extra people to come and do the time trial, because there's a rule in the Olympics that you have to do the road race if you want to do the time trial. So suddenly, they had these 50 slots and global television slots, and suddenly they didn't have people to fill it. So they needed people like myself to suddenly jump in. And I had obviously no time trial bike with me, no specific training, did not think that I was going to be there. And I get this last minute invitation to come and do the time trial. So I asked my Twitter followers, all of my new Twitter followers, should I do this? Because I was afraid of looking like a fool. And everyone replied positively. Everyone said, yes, you should do this. So I lined up to the Olympic time trial on a road bike, no skin suit, no aero helmet, no disc wheels, no tri-bars. And obviously being at the Olympics, I knew I could run around Rio and find a time trial bike. But racing on a time trial bike you've had for one day is only going to be a disaster. You're never going to be comfortable. And I knew that if I rocked up on a time trial bike, everyone would think that I'd be prepared and I would have a bad result and everyone would just be like, oh, he's terrible. And I was like, but if I just ride on my road bike, everyone will know that there's something weird going on here. And I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. And also, I think a big thing was when I had the invite to fill in these empty slots, I initially said no. And then I thought about it for a second, obviously went for a bike ride, as you do when you have your best thoughts. And I realized that someone had just phoned me and said, Dan, do you want to compete in the Olympics? Now, never mind the fact that I had just competed in the Olympics. I was offered on a silver platter to compete in the Olympics again. And my first response was no. And I was like, but wait, that's silly. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have fun. So I rocked up for the time trial. And because I was a late entry, they put me first, which means that the cameras have nothing to look at except me. So I rock up with a huge beard. I had glasses that were sporty glasses, but they looked like casual glasses. No time trial bike, nothing. And all of the Olympic cameras are on me, like being broadcast around the world. And the internet just lit up. Like, who is this guy? What's he doing? Then people discovered that I just live tweeted the road race. So it just blew out of proportion. And I ended up crossing the finish line in second, which meant that one person overtook me. So I ran to the hot seats because there was a hot seat podium, and I jumped on the second hot seat in second position, and got there were some volunteers loitering around, and I got a volunteer to take a photo of me with their own camera, with their own phone.
Yeah.
Because at that point, all of the photographers weren't hanging around the hot seats because there was no action yet. They were still all around. So I couldn't find a photographer at the Olympics. So I had to find a volunteer, got a photo, which means that for a brief moment in my career, I was lying in second position at the Olympics.
And we have the evidence of it.
Yes, and we have the evidence. And so, that was something that really went global, that sort of got a lot of people's attention. And I think that in a way, it sort of really sums up my career. I was good enough to be there. I'd earned that spot. I did all the work. But while everyone else was just sort of focusing on the win, I was able to sort of appreciate it and just be like, wait a second, I'm here. I've got this opportunity. And the other funny thing is that if you can imagine how far down the list they have to go to get to Namibia to invite me for these open spots. So they called every single nation that had cyclists at the Olympics and invited everyone to come. And everyone else turned them down because they're like, no, I didn't prepare. And I was the only one who said, yeah, why not?
Let's
go have some fun.
That's nice. I love it. I mean, I say it all the time that actually this is exactly the spirit of the podcast. I have a couple of pillars there. I would say 3. And offshore, there is the inclusivity. Offshore, of course, there is the inclusivity. Of course, there is the sustainability. But the third one is the why not approach. At the end, that's exactly what happened. I mean, somebody's inviting you to do a race at the Olympics. Are you prepared? Not. But why not? Let's do it. Who cares?
Yes, exactly. And I think that in this day and age where we have, because influencers didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
At least definitely not in the way they do today. And I think that a lot of influencers now are doing something. They do things in order to create content. They don't do things because they feel like doing it. You know, there's sort of, it's not a personal, I didn't race in the Olympic time trial because I wanted to be on TV. I raced there because I was like, wow, I've got this amazing opportunity. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be a personal journey. And I think that's really what also captured so much attention from people. And they were like, no, this guy's just having fun. This guy's doing what I would do in that situation. And I think that's something that I've somehow ended up doing quite often in my career and have had a lot of fun doing.
That's super awesome. Talking about fun, let's talk about that 1 second. Tro Bro Leon, how you got to know about that? And are you planning to do it again? How many times have you done it? And maybe also I think that they have also a sportive, right? That you can go and take part at. So
I would love to do the sportive, but racing Tro Bro Leon is not going to happen again. It's a professional race, and I'm definitely not a professional anymore. But basically, I had a teammate when I was racing for the first pro team that Rafa ever sponsored, which was a British team, Rafa Condor.
Cool kids, so cool bikes, I have to say. Super slick team. I loved it.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It really, being on that team changed the trajectory of my life, changed the way I saw so many things. It was such an amazing experience. Possibly a lot more in hindsight. At the time, I was still sort of eager and all I wanted to do was race my bike. And if I think about it in hindsight, the people I met, the connections we made, Rafa being Rafa, the sort of people involved with the team, there were so many creative people, not necessarily strictly athletic people. And that just opened this whole new world for me. And when I was on that team, one of my teammates, Tom Southam, who is one of the director sportifs on the EF Education First team. So he's still, he goes to the Tour de France every year, sitting in the car screaming at the guys on the radio, and also does a bunch of stuff with GCN. He had raced on some bigger teams before he was my teammate, and he told me about this race in France where you could win a pig. And I was like, what? There's a race with, like, who cares about winning beer? I mean, you can go and buy beer anywhere, but
absolutely,
you can win a pig. It blew my mind, this concept. And then he was like, and you ride over farms. You just go down dirt tracks. And I was like, what? It gets better? It's just like, it's this event that is an adventure. It's like, imagine you take pro cycling and you throw some pirates at it. That's what Tro Bro Leon is. and he said, the person who wins a race wins a pig, because obviously, like, who else would win the pig? So at some point, a few years later in my career, I got onto the biggest team I was ever on, which was Team Europcar, or Europcar, which is now Total Direct Energy, which is a team that Peter Sagan raced for last year. and I was fortunate enough to race with Thomas Voeckler and Pierre Roland and a whole bunch of other amazing riders. And as I joined the team, I was interviewed by a few people, and one journalist who was writing for L'Equipe came up to me and was like, so now you're on this team. What is your goal? What is your dream? Do you want to race the Tour de France? And I was like, no, I want to win the pig at Tro Bro Leon. I mean, like, what else is there? Like, that is, I'm not going to win the Tour de France. Of course, I would have loved to have raced the Tour de France, but winning the pig at Tro Bro Leon is like the coolest thing a professional cyclist could possibly do. And the next thing you know, it's in L'Equipe, this interview where, no, this guy doesn't want to race the Tour de France. He wants to win the pig at Tro Bro. And obviously the organizers of Tro Bro saw this and they were like, it's like the biggest compliment for them. So when I arrived at the race, unbeknownst to me, they were super excited because like, I'm just excited to be there, not sort of thinking about anyone else. And as we're sitting in the bus before the race, my teammates let me know a very vital piece of information was that the winner doesn't win the pig. The best rider from the region wins the pig. And it's in Brittany. And so the best Breton wins the pig. And I was just like, what? No one told me this. I can't win the pig. This is terrible news. But then I was like, wait a second. Are any of you Bretons? So then I had 2 Breton teammates. And so then I made a big fuss about like, I don't care what the team orders are, guys. I'm working for them. They need to win.
Love it.
Which obviously was a joke, but like everyone appreciated it. But what then really sort of made it amazing was we would go for the sign-on. And at the sign-on, I'm standing on the podium with Thomas Voeckler. I mean, like, France's darling. Like, absolutely France's darling.
Yeah.
And the team gets introduced and we're about to walk up the stage and they're like, wait, we've got a special gift for Dan Craven. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So 2 farmers come with a crate and they hand me a piglet on the stage. Now, you must think that I'm in cleats, straddling my bicycle. My one foot is clipped in to my cleats. And they give me a live squealing piglet. And I nearly fell over on the stage. But obviously, so this was basically the organizers being like, this guy's amazing. He gave us all of this coverage. We're going to give him a pig. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh no, they just previewing the guy who's going to win the pig. This is actually his pig, but they're letting me hold the pig. So I get a few photos of the pig and it's amazing. And I'm trying to kiss the pig and the thing squeals for its life. And they had a huge laugh. The whole team is laughing. Everyone is happy. Off we go. Do the race. I actually had a pretty good race. I was in the breakaway, not the first breakaway, like as the race started splitting, I was in the breakaway, but then I can't remember what happened after that. I definitely wasn't near the front by the time the race ended. And it's just such a stunning race. Like the scenery, you go past the coast, these coves, these rocks in the ocean, the color of the sea. I mean, I should have probably been focusing on the race, but like it was so beautiful. And of course, the farm tracks, just this amazing experience. Because back then, 2014, 15, gravel wasn't the thing it is now. So racing on a normal road bike across these farm tracks was just mind-bending experience. And we finish the race. Someone else wins the pig. I'm sad. We start driving back to the airport. And suddenly the team guy who's driving me to the airport, his phone rings. And they give me the phone and it's the bus driver, the Europcar bus driver. It's like, Dan, your pig is here. And I'm like, what do you mean my pig is there? Like, there was the other guy's pig that they just let me hold. They're like, no, there were 2 pigs, one for you and one for him. And he didn't want his pig. So there are now 2 pigs here and you can have them both if you want.
Oh, no way.
So I'm like, guys, turn around. And we'd already driven like 45 minutes. So we turned around and we drove like 45 minutes back and we get there. And now I got my pig and I got a second pig. And I'm like, wait a second, are these actually, they go, yeah, you can have them. And I was like, what? So now I'm already know I'm going to be late for my flight back to Spain because we had to turn around and waste time. So I run around and I try and find a way. And I had a teammate who lived locally, whose father was a farmer. We tried everything we could. It was just like, no, I'm going to miss my flight. So we just had to tell it was the Young Farmers Society. It was just like, guys, sorry, you're going to have to keep both pigs. I'm really sorry. But then obviously, my name got associated with the race because no one had ever had such an experience before. And usually the guy who wins the pig doesn't really care. Whereas for me, it was like the biggest deal. So then actually the next year I went back and I did the race again when I was racing for a different team, and all of the farmers remembered me still. And they're like, here, take the pig. But I was with a team car that wasn't going anywhere useful, so there was no chance we could take the pig. But it was also the next year when I went back that they presented me with a picture of myself, actually a painting of myself holding a pig. So that obviously hangs very proudly actually at our little factory. So an amazing memory of basically the early days of graveling and bacon.
I would say actually, I want to say two things about the Tro Bro Leon still. I believe that actually everything started, a bit more of the visibility of the race, because really before this kind of events, it was not really on the radar of people. And I think that actually, I don't know, that's my personal opinion and that's my personal thought. I believe that actually, thanks to these days, the Tro Bro Leon, there was actually also some races in France, like the Paris Tour, that started introducing some gravel into their races. But the biggest introduction, I have to say, because now Tro Bro Leon is super well known for their posters. Their posters, their drawings, they are super cool, I believe. They're a piece of art. They are presenting basically next year race with a painting of the year before. And your painting, as I remember, it was the first one that also had a pig on it. And after that, now almost every year, the pig is in the poster usually with the winner. For you, it was not the winner actually, but still the person that cared the most about the piglet, at least that year, but probably in their life. But this made really a change. It put in a different place, I believe, a bit more in the radar, that race now also in not only the Pro Tour, but I believe actually into the amateurs enthusiastic about cycling.
Yes. I think that the organizers didn't even realize how special their pig was beforehand. And so me making a big deal about it, they sort of also realized, oh, wait. And another funny thing, the main organizer, he actually draws that painting, or he paints it himself. He's an artist. So it was him who presented his own work to me when he gave me that drawing. So it was really, they're just layers on top of each other at little events like that. And I still feel that Tro Bro Leon does not receive the recognition it should, which is a real pity. It's just an event that is so much more than what it ends up receiving in terms of recognition. And I think that's just probably many reasons, partially with just the way the organizers think, but possibly also just it's one of the French Cup races, which means that it's important to French teams, but for other teams it doesn't hold that much sort of importance, which is a pity, but it's just an amazing event.
Absolutely.
And the Gran Fondo there, I've not done it, but I can highly recommend it because that just has to be amazing.
Yeah. I remember that actually early days, because we're talking anyways of early days of the BroomWagon. Early days of the BroomWagon, I was actually putting it in my bucket list. Tro Bro Leon, the amateur race, the Sportif, or the Gran Fondo race. It's still in my bucket list of something that I would love to do. Because it seems like really an adventure.
It sounds like we have to go together.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I'm not gonna hold your wheel, but for sure we're gonna have a good laugh before, during a tiny bit, but for sure after the race. So yeah, it seems like it's a good plan.
Amazing.
Let's move actually to the other topic. You were talking about the Olympics, right? You actually took part to two Olympics. We talked about London, we talked about Rio, and then unfortunately Tokyo didn't happen because you tested positive. But the story that I want to tell, I want you to tell now, starts exactly probably from Tokyo. In your days when actually you were thinking about creating a bicycle brand, or better, a bicycle itself, and then take part in Tokyo to the Olympics with that bike. We're talking about Onguza. Probably there, it was a completely different concept of the bike that you want to create. But everything started from there. Tell me more about that.
I kind of love this, and you're wrong.
Okay.
But this is also what I say, like, so many people remember me for different things. And I remember we had that beautiful chat at the Bespoke to Handmade Bike Show in 2022 in London. We were sitting in northeast London somewhere in some pub, and it was just great, an amazing evening.
Absolutely.
And so then all of these, what I'm going to talk about now is really fresh, but it was, in the grander scheme of things, it was just actually more of a blip along the way. And so I'm going to have to go back to 2010 to sort of give a better picture. I was at the time still racing for Rafa Condor, and I had, for some reason, realized that Condor was making steel bikes, and I wanted to know if they made one that I could race on. The answer was no. But a few months later, I got a phone call and they said, Dan, we just got our first racing steel bike demo. Do you want to try it? And I was like, yes, I do. And a few days later, it arrived at my house where I was living in Manchester at the time. And I started racing on this steel bike, and I did Tour of Britain. I did most of the Tour of Britain 2010 on this bike, and I did a whole bunch of races. I even became the king of the mountains in the Tropicala Misa Bongo, which is a race in Gabon, which is actually the reason I got onto Team Europe Car is because I met them there. And I mean, I became the king of the mountains against French guys who were racing the Tour de France. And I was on a steel bike. And one of the many, many things that really surprised me was people would come up to me in the bunch and they'd be like, oh, you're not riding your steel bike today. And I'd be like, yes, I am. And they're like, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, this thing is steel. And so basically modern steel really surprised people because it looked like it was aluminium, or with a quick glance, it even could look like it was carbon, like just the size of the tubes. And so because people's perception of steel is very outdated, because you don't see steel bikes in the circles I move in every day, or used to move in. And so people hadn't realized that steel bikes don't look like the things that, people used to race on in the 80s, or the bikes Miguel Indurain raced on. Like, those things looked in a very specific way, whereas modern steel bikes don't look like that at all. And I can't even remember what exactly made me want to ride that bike besides curiosity. But it was the next year that Rafa had a collection of frame builders build bikes for something called the Rafa Continental, which is kind of an early gravel riding thing, if you sort of are aware of the Rafa Continental back then. And I saw a bike which was built by a guy called Ira Ryan in Portland. And I thought this bike was gorgeous. And I was like, wow, who is this genius? And I started researching him, and I realized that he wasn't a rocket scientist or even an engineer. He was just a bike courier and a bike mechanic who then learned to build bikes. And here he was, after only building bikes for a handful of years, building bikes for Rafa. And I was like, for a Rafa event. And I was like, who does he think he is? Like, just because he's American, he can do this. What about me? What about us? Us being Africans. So in 2012, I took a steel bike frame building course, and I built my first bike. A few weeks later, I built my second bike, and about 2 weeks after I built my second bike, I won the Desert Dash in Namibia on it. And the Desert Dash is now it's 393 kilometers. Back then it was 340 something kilometers through the oldest desert in the world, which is the Namib, from the capital of Windhoek to the coast in Swakopmund. And one stage through the night, and I won that on a bike I just built. And I was like, wait a second, not only can I build bikes, but these bikes are also good enough to win races. And when I say good enough to win races, it's more a matter of they are not going to stop you from winning a race. Because what does good enough to win a race even mean? You know, if you look at all of the pros riding, when is it the bike? You know, like the guys winning the Tour de France on a Specialized or a Pinarello or whatever. Like, if you change their bike, it's not like that's really going to change.
The thing that I say most of the time is that they can even ride a broom, and then most probably they're gonna win the same. Yeah, put them on a broom, they're gonna win anyways. So.
But I mean, well, there we go. Like a broom, you know, like if you give them a bicycle from the 1950s, they're not going to win the race. That will stop them from winning the race. And so I was like, so this bike was good enough for me to win the race on. So what else is possible? And growing up in Namibia is a land of makers. Everyone, so many people here have little, and they use their hands because they kind of have to. But usually they use low quality products to just throw something together that they can use or that's helpful or whatever the case may be. But they are not using high-end ingredients with a lot of teaching and skill to build high-end products that are sold for a lot of money. There is no Dolce & Gabbana clothing factory in Namibia. There is no Audi car factory. You know, trust me, we have some amazing industry here. High quality things get made here, but there are no brands that come from here.
Yeah.
You know, there's products and there's companies, but actual brands. And to me, a brand is something that someone in New York would buy a t-shirt or a cap with that logo on it and pay extra because it has that logo on it. There's not really anything in Namibia that I'm aware of where people would do that and would buy that to feel good about themselves and not good because it's a charity.
Makes sense.
And here's another important thing that sort of really gets me is that Africa doesn't need more charities. Africa needs businesses. Do you want to pay for free schooling for a kid, or do you want to make sure that kid's parents have a good job and the parents can pay for the kid's schooling? I know which one I much prefer. And so, not saying we don't need the charities, but we don't need more. We need more business.
Yeah.
And so all of these ideas floating around in my head, and when my career finally came to an end, I came back to Namibia and I bought a oxygen acetylene tank brazing set where you have a little flame and you melt brass. And I started teaching these two gentlemen who'd worked for my family since 1999 as manual workers. And, you know, they jack of all trades. They would do any task they were given, but they're absolute gentlemen. They're amazing human beings, and they're really good with their hands. So I started teaching them very slowly. And then I flew in an award-winning master frame builder from the UK, Robin Mather. He won Best on Show. I think it was the first or maybe the second bespoke show. He won Best on Show. And he came out, spent a month here with myself and Petrus and Zacharias. And at the end of the month, they built their own bikes. And he said to me, Dan, these guys don't necessarily know maths very well, but you can learn maths.
Yeah.
But they know how to use their hands. There's this certain level of ability with your hands that some people are just clumsy and they bump into things the whole time. And some people are just automatically good with numbers. And some people are terrible with numbers, and some people are good with their hands. And like I said, Namibia is full of people who are good with their hands. And so that's basically where it took off. And I was like, I want us to make a finished product in a place where no one is used to finished products coming from. And that was the real birth of Onguza, even though it had been in my mind since 2010. That's when we started building beautiful handcrafted bicycles in a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere of Namibia. And I must say that the town that I come from, if I tell a fellow Namibian that I come from them, they laugh. It's sort of, if you in North and you tell someone that you come from the South, people often sort of have a visceral reaction to that. In a country that most people in the world have never heard of, where I come from, the locals also laugh, basically. And so we started slowly but surely to build these bicycles, but we were hiding them away. We didn't want people to know we were doing them because first impressions. If I say I'm building steel bicycles in Africa, everyone's going to think, oh, we're building charity bicycles. We're building low-cost bicycles. And I am a proud Namibian who went to the Olympics twice. And I'm like, if I can go to the Olympics twice, why can't we build the same things that people are building in Portland and in London? Because everyone automatically thinks something about Africa. But that's not the Africa that I come from. I come from this amazing, vibrant, energetic place that I believe is the future. And so I want to be a part of that future, and I want to show the way in my special little way. And so we hid away what we were doing for as long as possible. And then the idea had been for the Tokyo Olympics for me to race on a bicycle that we had built in this dusty little town in Namibia. And instead of doing that, I got COVID. So we had to redo all of our plans and launched a little bit later, actually probably almost a year later, but it was definitely worth the delay. And we are now producing beautifully handcrafted bicycles that we sell in places like New York and London and Melbourne, and ship our bicycles overseas, and have created real pride in the work that we do.
That's incredibly cool. And let's stay 1 second a bit more on the bike. So basically, anyways, we're talking about frames that are really capable to modern frames, modern steel frames that would be capable actually to start on with any adventure. So, I mean, from really riding a Pro Tour race or racing in the Pro Tour until every kind of adventure that we really like, something like, I don't know, long adventures and long pace and endurance adventures and everything like that, but also having fun everywhere, I would say in your backyard or everything. They are capable of doing everything. And you decided to do it in steel. You explained me already why steel, but this was actually the first idea that you got in mind because you got fascinated about steel. But for example, I mean, talking about really making things instead of building molds and everything could have been, for example, aluminum or aluminium. Why steel?
Okay, so I want to quickly go back on one thing. I was going to race the Olympics on a very special bike. I had two aeronautics engineers help me working on the project. Sturdy bicycles from the UK.
Yeah.
He did a lot of work helping me. We had the bicycle for Tokyo had 3D printed aerodynamic. I mean, now you're getting more and more steel or metal 3D printed bicycles, but back in 2001, that was like very, very new. And that bike had aerodynamic 3D printed, not just any old 3D printed, stainless steel parts. It had a carbon fiber integrated seat post. It had an inverted down tube, which made it a bit of a truncated aerofoil. So basically, the most competitive bike that we could build, that I could race the Olympics on. Would it have been the best bike at the Olympics? No, under no circumstances. But it was the bike that made me do all of the work. It was my reason for being there. So it was the best bike we could build. Would I advise someone else to race Tour de France on it? Probably not. In fact, no, I wouldn't. But
Okay.
is it a professional level bicycle? You know, it's at the back end of the professional level bicycle, but it's not to build in steel. It's kind of like you're not going to build a Formula One car using steel. And if you are forced to, like in my position, I decided I was going to do the best I could. You do the best you can. But if you want to race a normal Formula One race, you're going to not just use steel. So I was sort of seeing how far we could push it, and we got really far, and I'm really, really proud of the bicycle, and it's absolutely amazing. But in this day and age, you know, the things you can do with carbon are beyond the abilities we can do with steel. But if you are not racing, then carbon fiber doesn't hold all of the advantages anymore, in my opinion. With carbon, you can do aerodynamics, which you simply won't be able to do with steel in the same way. You can also, like, weight is a big thing, but weight to me is much more of a marketing tool than it is actually a difference. If you think about 1 kilogram difference on your bicycle, if I weigh 80 kilograms, if my bicycle is going to weigh 6 or 7 kilograms, it's not a 1 kilogram difference from 6 to 7 kilograms. It's a difference between 86 and 87 kilograms. And if you just say 500 grams or 200 grams, like, in my mind and in my experience, weight is so much more a marketing tool than it is anything else. But where steel comes in is steel has a longevity that carbon will never, ever have. And steel has the way steel reacts, it absorbs the bumps, the comfort that comes from steel. But then the other big thing is that steel is really, you can make your own thing out of steel. You can put your own signature on a steel bicycle. And that's, I think, the big reason why I chose steel is that you can hand make these bicycles and you can put your signature on there, like your artist's mark on there. They can be recognizably your style, and it's handmade. And in the other materials, it's just not possible quite in the same way. And then in the production numbers that we do, it's like limited. Like, you know, we get a hacksaw and a file out and we work on these things until these tubes fit together that you basically don't see daylight between the tubes in any way. That's something that really lends itself well to working with steel. And then if you think about what I previously said about the longevity and the comfort. So if you want to go and win your local race, okay, go and buy a plastic bike that comes from the East somewhere. But if you want to ride your bike all day, or if you want to swing your leg over the top tube of a bicycle and be like, wow, this thing is special to me. This thing is meaning to me. I mean, lots of people swing their legs over their carbon fiber bicycles and they feel that way, and that's great. Like, I'm pro cycling. I'm not pro steel bicycles. Everything. If you're riding a bicycle, I'm a happy man. But I also I buy products that speak to me. There's a jeans company in Wales called Hyatt that I absolutely adore. In one of our emails, we mentioned painted jackets. It's like there's certain companies that really, really speak to me, and the ones that speak to me are never mass produced. They're always small numbers. For example, if I could improve Rafa in my mind, in my life, it would be if they owned their own production.
Yeah.
They don't own their own production. All of their things are made in other factories. And that is something that to me is like, yes, I don't actually know. I know who designed this garment and I know who ordered it and where I bought it, but I don't actually know anything about who made it and the conditions that their life are. Whereas if you buy, I'm holding a teacup that I just finished my tea in. Like, this is a beautiful piece of ceramics that someone made, and my wife and I bought it when we were in California from a Californian artist. That holds so much more value to me than just the fact that it was a cup. And I love products where there's I know that this product has its own life in a certain way. And I think that if that kind of thing is important to you, and our bicycles are definitely good enough not to win the Tour de France, but to win races, to get you there, to cross Africa, to take you on adventures, but also to give you a product that has a very different meaning and connection. And that's why I really love what we do.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And also I can say on my side, I've been asked this question, I would say a month ago. The episode went live last week. And Pascal, we did something like a weird concept of podcast. It was a co-host, co-guest. Basically, the both of us were hosting our own podcast and guesting the other person podcast. And of course, the question goes on that because he's big into mountain bike. He's now taking part to some gravel races and everything. And the question's actually both ways. And I was asked, what's your bike, ideal bike, the bike that you would ride tomorrow and probably could also be the only bike that you would own, even if this is always a dangerous statement there. But on the other side, my answer is basically a bike that has a meaning, has a story, and that could last for long. Of course, we can talk about a lot of things there. We can talk about, of course, it's branding as well. We have to consider that. Telling a story about the product that you're building, putting a story behind it, but also putting solid basis on that. For sure, it's a branding thing, but it's also what you want to communicate to the world in terms of your, using strong words, heritage, or just message and values that you want to share with people. That's super important. But also on the other side, going to the bone of the conversation. And now I'm talking about the difference between metal bikes and carbon bikes. As much as also carbon can be repaired and maybe understood and maybe you can keep it for longer. For sure, you need a different care of it, and for sure, you know that actually it has a lifespan. On the other side, metal bike, we're talking about steel. I mean, steel is in my heart as a material. It was actually my first proper road bike was a steel frame, custom made in Italy. And I knew that I wanted that bike because this is something that I could keep forever, because you can maintain it. Of course, if you take care of how you wash it and how you take care of the rust and everything, you can really keep it forever. And that's something that stays with me in terms of the message that this bicycle gives to me, all the adventure that you're living with it, the performance that you can have with it, because it still is a steel bike made in a modern way, but also talks to me in terms of sustainability, because it's not only taking care and using things that are sustainable as a material of it, but it's also things that you buy once and you have the opportunity to keep them for a long time. Buying less is the first form of sustainability. And on the other side is the bike that will bring you, so sustainability is on one side, but also the bike that can bring you everywhere. And most probably the modern concept of bikes is that you have a bike where you can go on dirt if you want. You can go on gravel, on road, everywhere you want. That is comfortable to do that, but also that you are not scared to put it on the back of your car and go to another country and ride there, whatever life throws at you, or taking the train and go there. With a carbon bike, you need to be a bit careful on that thing. For sure, you need to be careful also on your steel bike, but let's say that actually is a bit more sturdy. We're talking about sturdiness.
So we recently we host an event in our hometown called the Loskop Local, and it was a few months ago. And after the event, some friends, one guy flew in from the UK, 3 people came up from South Africa, and the 5 of us cycled over 4 days from the town where I grew up, where the factory is, to the coast where my family now lives, because I commute up and down. And it took us 4 days. We did 2 nights of wild camping through the Namib Desert. It was absolutely this mind-bending experience. And there was like, we didn't see people for 36 hours at one point. We're just in the middle of nowhere. And all of us were on steel bikes. And at one point I looked around and I said to the other guy, can you imagine being on a carbon fiber bike out here in the middle of nowhere? And all of us were just like, no, like you wouldn't want that. And I think another big thing with the steel bikes is if you keep it for the rest of your life or not, it's the fact that it can be.
Exactly.
It was made for that. Almost all carbon fiber bicycles, and I would say virtually all of them that are made in the East, are made to be used for a handful of years and then to go out of fashion. Like if you think of what was your dream carbon fiber bicycle 3 or 5 years ago, and now look at it now, and you're just like, ooh,
yeah,
no,
absolutely.
Like it's gone out of fashion because all of the tubes are these weird shapes and this, that, the next thing, and they just age badly. Whereas metal bikes have these clean and crisp lines, normally, not always. And if they are designed correctly, then they have a timelessness to them. And that's something that I very much am a fan of and aim towards, to have this timelessness that the bicycle, if you keep it forever or not, it still looks amazing in the future. And some of the early designs, I've actually sort of simplified them, sort of changed them, because I was like, yeah, this doesn't have that level of timelessness. And you can literally just respray the bicycle and it feels like a new bicycle, where you wouldn't necessarily do that with other materials. And I love to think about a few other products when I compare things. If you think about, so watches and knives. I have 2 knives in my kitchen that are handmade. And I'm embarrassed to say that we barely ever use them. The knives are so special to us, which is silly because a knife is there to be used.
Yeah.
But they were handmade. One of them was actually made by a friend of mine. The other one was made by an artisan in the UK. Beautiful things. You can see how this blade had been worked and hammered and made and cost a lot of money because they were handmade. And every time I pick up those knives to use them, I don't just pick them up and go and cut the tomato or cut the bread or whatever I'm doing. I pick it up and I look at it first. And it gives me this warm feeling. And then I go and use it. And then I immediately go and clean it because I don't want that blade to just lie on the pile over there. And it's a product that changes my behavior because of how I feel about it. And if you think about a watch, I mean, everyone has cell phones these days. No one needs a watch anymore. But wearing a watch, still, it now feels like jewelry. And I have a watch. I'm not wearing it at the moment, but I've actually started wearing it again. And every time I feel it on my wrist, every time I look at it, it's a beautiful, crisp design, simple, and it just gives me this feeling of like sort of simplicity and beauty and in a way art, and knowing that this watch that I have was again, it was also made in the UK. Like it wasn't just something that came off. I mean, my phone, came off a production line. This thing, I drop it, it's gone. Tomorrow I replace it. I don't care. Whereas my watch, if I lost that thing, I would actually care about it. And all of I've ridden so many bicycles.
I can imagine.
I care about my Olympic bicycles and then the bicycles that we built, because they have this entire different meaning to me. And if steel bicycles don't mean something to someone, that's absolutely fine. But hopefully there is something that speaks to you. Hopefully, you have something that is meaningful in your life. And I think that as long as you have those things, then go and celebrate them and enjoy them. And hopefully there's some people who enjoy their bicycles and enjoy their steel bicycles who this means something to.
Absolutely. Talking about watches, I think I never said the story. I don't want to steal the show from you, actually, but I want to say this little story. And we were talking about pieces that you are taking of your life. Things that you are keeping of your life forever. And watches are actually, it's a classic, right? It's actually, the Pulp Fiction was talking about that as well, right? But the story is that, I have this watch is here. Because I also believe that things that are beautiful and things that actually you care of, you also need to use them as much as possible. Even if now I'm contradicting myself, I'm not using it so much because I care too much about it. But I have this watch here at home, and basically the short story of a long story of it is that my grandfather, so the father of my mom, he actually went to war. I'm talking about Second World War. And on the way back after 43, he take the parts of the partisans. So he actually was fighting he was fighting actually in the mountains against the Nazis there. And then after that, he was caught. Of course, he went to, it was not a concentration camp, it was a working camp. And then he escaped from that. He actually found shelter. He was super sick with a family. He came back home after the war was over, walking. I'm talking about south of Germany until south of Italy. He came back home. War fortunately was over, and he was basically also ill. He spent a lot of time actually recovering. As I was saying, war was over, so the Italian nation, actually, they said, okay, now we want to reward people that fought for our freedom. And then they started giving him a salary for it, because he was making a lot of work already during the war and stuff. So actually they maintained the partisan that could survive the war. The first salary that he got after this story, he said, I need actually to invest this in something that is meaningful. And he bought this watch. He wore it at his wrist for basically ever. Then at a certain point, 10, 15 years before he died, he stopped using it because he didn't find anybody to repair it. And then he bought a new one. The new one ended up to my older cousin. Nobody actually cared about that. To my older cousin. And then at a certain point, I remember I was at university. I thought, but that watch that my grandfather Cesare was using it all the time. Where did it go? Then I talked with my grandmother, and he said it should be there. My mom picked it up, went to a guy actually who fixed it, and he fixed it, and now it's here with me. And these are the kind of things you can use them, you can repair them. Actually, I broke it as well at a certain point because I was using it a lot, and I think on a bicycle ride it just dropped. I broke it. I went to the same guy that repaired it the first time. He repaired it again, and now he's still here with me. And I wear it all the time. That actually I want to feel this kind of soul and vibes of the watch. And that's exactly what you were saying. Do you want to keep it forever? You would love to. Can you keep it real forever? Keep it there really forever? You don't know. But still you have the possibility that if you want to keep something forever, you can. If you maintain that, you have the possibility to fix it. And that's exactly, it's something that you put it on your wrist, or talking about bikes. You jump on the bike and you know that you have something special for you. And that somebody who made it, talking about bikes, also was putting all his effort, best skills, passion and soul in order to do that.
Completely. And that's such a beautiful story. And having something that every time you pick it up, it's history in your hand, and the meaning of that item means so much to you. And that's also the way that we do our bicycles. Like, you buy a custom fit bicycle. It means that every customer has like an hour-long video call with me before we even start.
Okay.
And we discuss everything. People get photos of the process of your bike being built.
That's nice.
People get photos as it goes to the paint booth. It's like, it's this, you go on this journey with your product as it's being made. So by the time you get it, you already have this relationship. You already have this history with this item. And that's actually something that we really bad at marketing, because people don't realize that there's all of this. You don't just get a bike. You don't just go to a bike shop and pick it up. You by the time the bike arrives, you've gotten history with it already, and it gives you this meaning. So when I say you swing your leg over the top of the bike and it means something, it's like it's already had this whole history with you, which is just something that, it's the way I am. Products like that are what I want to surround myself with. I don't want to buy products, fast fashion. I don't want to surround myself with any of that. I want things that, those 2 knives in our kitchen, I want my daughter to inherit one and my son to have the other one.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's of course something different, right? But also something different is not only the product themselves. It's also the model of the business that you are shaping. You were talking about, hopefully I would remember the name, Petrus and Zacharias, right?
Yes.
Perfect. They are the senior frame builders, and they are the ones actually that make the thing happen, together also with the 2 junior frame builder that I don't remember their name. Actually, maybe help me out.
Zacchaeus and Tilombene.
Okay, this is a bit more complex. Zacchaeus and Tilombene.
Yes.
More or less. Okay, I got it. And they are actually also the junior frame builder. Actually, 2 things actually hit my imagination and my mind on that. Is that, first of all of them, from the videos that I saw, at least, and from the story that I read, all of them, they are good in different parts on the process. So I don't know, something like, I don't remember who was, but actually talking about the filing and adjusting the brazing and everything. Then the person that actually loved all the math that goes into the tubing and everything. The person that is actually then making the bicycle itself. And that's actually great. So try to surround yourself with people that have your same passion. Everything else can be, taught and something that you can learn, but also surround yourself with people that have different interests. Because if you just start to building a business where everybody does the same thing really good, or is passionate about the one thing, then actually there's going to be some overlapping. In this way, everybody's happy to improve themselves on doing something better all the time in their own passion and actually go deep on that. And also on the other side, something that actually hit me is that Petros and Zacharias, the senior frame builder, now they also own shares of the company. And as soon as the junior are going to move to a senior position, they're going to do the same, because this thing that actually I read, no, it was a video actually, you want everybody to own their progress, own the progress of the meaning of the company that you're building. Tell me more about that.
Thank you. I don't know if there's more to say. You basically did a great job. So there's one thing that you said, they all share a passion, and I'm not sure how much of a passion we share. It's basically the people who work for me, we are very different and work with me. The team, they ride their bikes, but they ride their bikes to work. So a bicycle is more of a tool than a pastime. But they are very proud people who have never had jobs that they can necessarily be too terribly proud about. Whereas now they are doing something that there's a level of precision, there's a level of attention to detail that goes into their everyday work that has never existed before. And also, and I love this story. I was recently talking to the crew, and Pietra said to me, they love it when we have visitors. And I was like, oh, okay, what do you mean? And he said, previously, if they were working on the farm, doing something, fixing something, no one cared. I mean, obviously, the task had to be done, but no stranger ever came to them and was like, what are you doing? Whereas now, we literally have people flying into Namibia
Incredible.
to come and visit us. And they are like, people want to see what I am doing. Some person is flying from London or America to, come and have an amazing holiday in Namibia. But part of the reason they chose Namibia is because they want to come and see what I am doing. Like, my work in and of itself is valuable. And the amount of pride that gives them is phenomenal. And in our small communities, that doesn't exist. Like, people come to Namibia to see the sand dunes and the desert and the elephants and the rhinos and the lions. If you say New York, you immediately think of the New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. If you say Switzerland, you immediately think of the Alps and the mountains, but then you think about the cheese and the people making the cheese and eating the cheese. Yep. And you say London and you think about culture and you think about people. And you say Namibia and no one thinks about the people. Mm-hmm. You just think about the desert and the animals. And I'm saying, no, but we have all of these amazing people. Why are we not part of the conversation? And so basically what Pietra said to me when he told me that story was like, they are now part of that conversation. People are coming to see them at work, and they are valued, they are skilled. And that is why the two senior builders have equity in the company, because without them, the company is nothing. And we are trying to give them a better future, give our community a better future, show that we can exist, and without being a charity. Because I cannot do this without them. The company needs them, so they need to be rewarded. And the company still has a really long way, let's be honest. Like, I'm an ex-professional cyclist. I don't have a business background. I'm learning very quickly. I'm making all the mistakes.
Of course.
But it's, we're 2.5 years in that I've been doing this full time, and we're getting there. Like, I've learned so much that the company is now starting to actually, dare I say, work. And I say that like I need to be very clear. We started building in 2017. We launched publicly in 2022 because I was afraid of the world's perception of their work, my factory team's work. And the big mistake was that I was focusing on their work. I wasn't focusing on my work. So we launched when their bicycles were great. We didn't launch when my understanding of running a business was great. So my team is actually way ahead of me. Like the bicycles we've been pumping out have been amazing ever since, I mean, before 2022. But me, in terms of making sure everything runs smoothly, that's been a learning curve. And I think I'll give one example. We built almost 30 bikes by the time 2022 rolled around, and we launched publicly with this amazing video. Please check out Onguza's YouTube channel. There's some amazing 3-minute videos there.
Absolutely.
Award-winning videos. They're like really amazing. Because we wanted to launch with a splash and be like, hey, we're bicycles from Namibia, but we're not the kind of bicycles you think, and Namibia is not the kind of place you think it is. It's really something different. So we basically built about 30 bikes before I was like, okay, every single bike that's coming out now is of a certain quality and standard. But bike number 7, so basically one of our very earliest bikes, which is a bike that kind of I was embarrassed about. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have built another 23 bikes afterwards to prove that we were good to myself. I gave that bike to a very good friend of mine, Alex Miller, who is now a 2-time Olympian Namibian mountain biker. He actually just yesterday came second at the mountain bike marathon world championships.
Wow.
He came 22nd, even though he slit his front tire and had to patch it and lost all kinds of time. So he's really good. And he last year won South Africa's biggest gravel race, beating the 2-time Cape Epic champion, Matt Beers.
Oh, wow.
In a sprint.
Yeah.
And Alex won that race on bicycle number 7, which means that from the early days, our bicycles were really amazing and good enough to beat Matt Beers on his top-end Specialized S-Works gravel bike. 2-time Cape Epic champion.
Yeah.
But still, I was like, no, our bikes are not good enough. We have to get our bikes better. And so we've won other races. South Africa's biggest ultra distance called the Munga, which is about 1,300 kilometers long. We won that, I think, also in 2022, one of our bikes. The Traka, which in my opinion is the biggest gravel race in Europe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. In 2022, Connie Lusa, the Swiss mountain biker, came third at the Traka on one of our bicycles. So actually, earlier in the conversation, I was saying like you wouldn't really race the Tour de France on one of our bicycles. That's road bikes. If you want to do a gravel race, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't use one of our gravel races for any event. Like absolutely, because in gravel, the comfort is more important. How the bicycle absorbs the shocks is more important from the road surfaces, and aerodynamics is less of a matter. Not saying it's not a matter, but it matters a lot less. And like I said, yes, weight does matter, but weight is on a comparative scale, weight, in my opinion, like I said earlier, is more of a marketing tool than it is a tool that actually matters to your guy on the street. If you're winning the Tour de France, yes, every marginal gains, weight matters. But if you are just a bike rider, rather buy something that's heavier and better quality than something that's cheaper and light, and that, I think no one would argue with that. And that, I think, sort of puts it into perspective.
Absolutely. I need to still talk about brand. And actually, you mentioned that. We're talking about Painter Jacket CO.
Yes.
Little story. I love I love the work. For my little things that I try to do in the middle of 700,000 thing, my Zier, my alcohol free beer, I try to get inspiration from them, not on the business perspective, because it's different businesses, but at least on telling the story. I think that they are just great. Everything behind, I mean, they're doing, for people that people don't know that, Google it first because they are awesome. On the other side is a jacket company, is a couple, and basically they are doing only jackets 4 times a year, one model for each season, basically. And they basically pre-sell everything so that they can only produce the jackets that they sell and not anything before. It's incredible as business model, but also on the other,
absolutely amazing.
and they are doing also amazing jackets. I have actually Thomas, a friend of mine who lives next door. He has 2 or 3 of them. The quality of it's incredible. They are really, really nice. Actually, I just got a denim one and I borrowed it a couple of times already. Just for you to tell you. Because I never arrived right on time to buy it, but that's another story. But actually, the cool thing that I believe it's really outstanding is their stories. I mean, they put out there some stories of why they made these this jacket in particular, this model, or why they use this material now. It just came out, the story that actually they are using a tweed that is made in northern Scotland. And also how the fabric was made is just incredible. But the thing that I like is that they're putting a story all the time, and actually I was reading one of their stories, and actually they put out there in the Instagram, I think, okay, we are working on that, just let us know what you are working. And then after this question, they published this story on saying, okay, these are the things that you are working on. So our community is working on. And in the 15, I think, different things, I found Onguza. And then I said, this makes sense. Actually, this is the stories that are actually comparing. So this is their main brand, how would you say that, statement, the main brand identity that they're putting out. Tell me a bit more about the brand Onguza. It's super recognizable. Everything based, as I would say, in experience, stories, and of course the story of Namibia. But tell me more about that. How are you building this up?
Thank you. Like you said, painter jackets, I think you described them well. Limited, really well made. They bring out drops. The drops sell out immediately. Like, I don't own a painter jacket yet, and it's like one of the things that I really, really covet. I want painter jackets. Just for those who are Googling, it's spelled with a Y, not an I, Pay. And the couple, they're absolutely amazing. And actually, funnily enough, they met because my wife had done something and it gave the girl an idea, and she went to Wales to the jeans factory, which is where she actually met Hugh. So my wife is actually involved in them meeting each other, which I'm obviously very proud of.
Great.
And they're just amazing humans, and they make an amazing product. And they really were one of the companies that we've looked up to all the time. But in terms of our branding, we are doing something in a place where people don't expect it. Like, beautiful jackets to come from a couple who live in London, that's like, it's a no-brainer. But beautiful, expensive handmade bicycles to come from a tiny country in Africa, that's sort of really unusual. And so we've done a lot of work on our branding, our photography, our storytelling, which is why I said, please go and watch those 2 videos, because it's like, the videos actually don't even sell the bicycles. They actually sell Namibia, because if Namibia is in the words of an orange-faced man, a shithole country, then how can we make beautiful products? But that's why we have these videos where it's actually celebrating Namibia, because Namibia is an amazing place, full of vibrancy and energy. And if this place is so interesting, well, then of course we can make interesting, beautiful products. And so that's sort of a big part of our storytelling. You'd also see that all of our bikes have a funky cow paint job. Now, the funky cow is, everyone thinks it's a leopard or a cheetah or a giraffe. It's a yellow background with black blotches on it. And it's just a cow, but it's yellow. And why do we have the funky cow? there's very little in our country and in our communities that is more important than cows. Cows just hold this really high value. So we, instead of celebrating elephants and deserts, we want to celebrate the things that are important to people. So that's the cow. And then the yellow is the vibrancy and the energy and the creativity of this nation that people are often not aware of. So that's what we have it on every single bike, because that's what we love. And our cheeky little emblem is a goat. And again, a goat, it's what's so important to people. And it's a little bit of like, we don't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, like, a goat is definitely not a serious animal. We're not sitting here in Namibia and have an elephant or a lion as our emblem, because that's what everyone would expect. And everyone would expect from a bicycle brand out of Namibia to be something that you can buy for 400 euros. Meanwhile, our bicycle's price is comparative to a high-end carbon fiber bicycle, as it should be, because it's handmade and it takes us about a week to build a frame. Then it hasn't even been painted yet. Speaking earlier about the difficulties of running the business, we had one painter in Windhoek who wasn't holding up with the quantity of painting we needed done. And our next best option was to send it more than 1,000 miles away to South Africa, our bicycles, to be painted, because there are not places here for painting bicycles. Panel beaters to paint a car perfectly around every single corner, but like painting a bicycle is a different thing.
Absolutely.
So we eventually had to build our own paint booth. I had to learn about cubic meters per hour airflow and inlet filters and exhaust filters and no flash fans and all. Like, I had no idea about these things. I had to learn all of these things to build a booth. But what that now means is, on this one little property, we have the office where everything originates from, and the factory is right there, and walking distance is the paint booth, and it all happens almost under one roof on one property. And so it's really, we control so much and we do so much, and it's showing off the capabilities of a place where most people have never heard of, never mind would think that we could do such a thing. And the fact that we are selling bicycles in New York City and in London and Switzerland and Melbourne means that we clearly, there's people who our story means something to. And I also love to say that, if you buy a fancy watch or if you buy a Porsche, you didn't hear of Porsche 2 years ago. You've been wanting it for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we are building products that are really expensive because of the amount of effort and care that goes into making them. And if people buy them, there has to be a certain level of desire for that product, but for that brand, for those people. But most people, we've only started telling the world just over 2 years ago that we exist. So the amount of time for people to build up that level of desire, that level of trust, has really been short. So the fact that we've sold any bikes at all is actually a marvel.
Yeah.
And I just know that the longer we keep going, the wider that net would have spread of people who've been watching us, thinking about us. Because even buying a painter jacket, it's not cheap. I mean, it's not ridiculously expensive, but the price of an expensive jacket and the price of an expensive bicycle is very big difference.
Yeah.
So and again, that's why we worked so hard on all of our photography and our storytelling and our videos, because it's getting across who we are, so that people buy our bicycles and hopefully, us existing in the world is something that people really want to see more of.
Absolutely. Talking about that, Dan, I need to ask you the last question.
Yes.
Is what's next? I mean, maybe we didn't touch base on that. I can actually say it quickly. At the moment, we can see in your portfolio 3 bikes, and is the Holy Road, the Goat Gravel, and the Rooster Hardtail. And these are actually the things that we're building everything on. But what's next in terms of, I don't know, other ideas of bikes or whatever is going with your personal development or the team's personal development on building Onguza on? What's next?
A lot. There's a lot. We are making more and more products locally in Namibia. There's been no communication so far about all of this work that's been happening behind the scenes. Parts for the bicycles. One thing that's kind of a little bit tricky with steel bikes, with carbon bikes, every year or every 2 years, they bring out a new model and there's big stories and big here, better, lighter, whatever. With steel bikes, it's like, no, but it doesn't make sense to update the models every year or every second year because it was already good. It's not like anything changes in the same way. So what we are trying to do is we don't have any stainless steel bikes on our website. We're about to build our first stainless steel bike. We are actually, this coming weekend, I'm going to be taking photos of a production bike that has a carbon fiber seat tube. So we've been playing around with that. So we're looking at other things that we can do without making our current or our old bikes look outdated, because they are not outdated. It's one of the things with steel bikes, like if you build it properly and it's sort of modern in the right way, classical in the right way, then it doesn't date, or it shouldn't date. So we're just trying to offer more, but at the same time almost show off our capabilities more. And then one big thing that I'm not going to go deep into is the fact that if we can build bicycles in Omaruru, in Namibia, what else can we do? That is a huge, huge part of my vision. It's, if we can do that, what can't we do? So there's a whole world of opportunity ahead of us, of other things that we can do, other sectors we can move into. Because 5 years ago, if I said to you, here's a really expensive steel bike brand coming out of Namibia, people would have just rolled their eyes and laughed. So, what else can we do?
Can't wait to know it, actually. I'm not gonna go too deep into that because I know that actually you're developing it, and knowing also how was the development of the brand of Onguza and the bikes and everything that took 30 bikes before launching them. I can imagine that you are in this development process, but I can tell you that I'm gonna actually follow the journey closely to know what else you can do in Namibia.
Amazing. Please do. And please, listeners, we have a newsletter. That is where we love to send out our first sneak peeks of things. So do sign up there as well.
That's perfect. I wanted to ask you actually the last thing. Where can we find you? So Onguza, Dan Craven and everything.
Actually, something I should have said right at the beginning, Onguza is written the way you pronounce it, which is part of the reason we love the name, Onguza. The full term is Okuti Onguza, which means the vast expanse of nothingness out there. So, but if you just have Onguza, it basically means the desert. And we are on the edge of the desert. And it's such a beautiful, strong, easy to pronounce, easy to spell word that we just fell in love with it when we found it. So that's what we are called. And you can find us at Onguza Bicycles, or onguza.com, or on Instagram, Onguza Bicycles.
That's perfect. Dan, thanks a lot. It was an amazing chat.
This has been amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. For sure, everybody. We could have covered a lot of other things, but maybe this is actually something like the prologue of a longer chat, of another chat that we can do. Who never knows?
If there's questions from the listeners, send them in, and I'd love to continue the conversation.
That's perfect. Dan, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Bye. How much can I love this kind of stories? Adventure, cycling, why not approach, going to the Olympics, doing the time trial without a time trial bike. People, this man, Dan from the NAM, or better, Dan Craven, is just amazing. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. We have also a lot of super similar interests when we talk about painter, jackets, and everything related to that. People, BroomWagon for the social, but especially for the pleasure of your truly Calamaro. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you want to know more about all the process that I'm having, anyways, spoiler alert, I still didn't sell any on my bike, also because I'm using them more or less. But yeah, if you want to know more about this process that I hope that by 2025 is gonna bring me to let go two bicycles that I really love and take one that is made of metal and with which I can do all the things that I would love to do. So basically adventuring without rushing on a one-by bike. Well, keep on listening to this podcast. Maybe you're gonna have some updates this year, next year, whenever. Thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for being until here. I talked about Bespoked already into this episode. Bespoked episode is coming quite soon because I recorded some interviews at Bespoked Germany in Dresden 2 weeks ago after my amazing trip with Andre and John going from center of Czech Republic till Dresden on the bike. And in this case, I was telling you, right? The open up is still rushing, is still running, is still riding because I have been having a lot of adventure with them. And this one was one of those. So stay tuned. Next episode is going to be on that. In the meantime, keep on following Calamaro CC or the BroomWagon Podcast on social media, and down below there is a coffee link. Drop some coins to keep this podcast running and being independent, and of course subscribe to Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, YouTube, whatever you want. And if you want, push the bell button and of course put a rating over there. I would appreciate it so much, and share it with your friends if this episode open some doors of relationships or stuff that you have with people that are close to you and you think that somebody could be interested to this episode. Well, do it. Ciao, people.